All right, hey guys, this is the SMO survey results. I recently had a SMO survey that I posted, and I was able to get over 100 respondents. Um, this is just going to be an unedited, um, unscripted video. Will be just a PowerPoint presentation, just nice and simple. I'm gonna kind of go quickly through them all because I had a 33-page document accompanying it, and if you would like to go into more detail, then I would recommend you read that. But I'm kind of going quick here. That way people don't lose attention. I got to keep that audience retention up. So try and not lose people. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, these are all the respondents. Thank you all for responding to this. Had some pretty quote unquote famous people respond to this, which I like to brag about. But other than that, it was pretty good sample size. Got over 100 people to respond, which I believe will make it a good sample size for the SMO population, or at least active SMO population. Let's move on. This is a list of the questions that I asked them. Pretty straightforward, nothing special. If you like to read each one, you can pause. But yeah, another one of the ones that I'd like to go over is the red and blue button question. It'll be exciting. We'll get into that later. So, first of all, what is your age? Pretty straightforward. Here's the histogram of ages in SMO. The the average was around 20 years old, which makes sense to me. The minimum was 13. First quartile, which is the essentially you're in the 0 to 25% range, is 16.25. You're below that. Then the median is like the middle of the road, is 20. Q3, which is essentially 50% to 75%, is 22. That's the upper bound, I guess you could say, for that. That'd be the 75th percentile. And then the max was 48. And the median was 20. The most common answer was 20 mode, and the standard deviation was 5. Essentially, how far on average you would be from the mean. Only 84 people responded to this question, which I think makes sense. Not people were not required to answer all the questions out of privacy's sake. So only 84 people responded to this question, which I'm fine with. Yeah, let's go ahead and move on. What region do you live in? This one's pretty straightforward. 68% of people were in North America, 27% in Europe, 3% in Australia. I guess 1 person from Asia. I think this data makes sense. A lot of people in the SMO community are in North America, whether that be United States or Canada, and a lot of people, only 25% people from Europe. I do think this data is a little bit skewed towards North America because I live in North America and have more North American friends over European friends, which probably skews the data towards North America more, but that's okay. It's pretty accurate, I would like to think. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. So the player perceived rankings, this one was very interesting to me. I asked people to rank themselves based on a scale of 1 to 100 based on their SMO skill, and the results were pretty interesting. Most people, I would like to say, were around like the 70 to like 80 range. The mean of it was 71 and median was 75. Which I think makes sense. Like, people who speedrun the game are probably going to be above average skill level, I would like to think. But let's actually move on to this slide, which is the same thing, but rankings among sub-hour runners. Everybody who had sub-hour who submitted my survey, I grouped them separately. And this is the rankings. Personally, I feel like people who rank themselves below 80 are a little bit too harsh on themselves. Considering they have sub-hour, which I think I stand by. But interestingly enough, a lot of people who are like top level runners ended up ranking themselves like in the lower 90s, which kind of didn't make sense to me because some of these people have like world records, or some of these people have like 55s and 80%. Only ranking themselves like in the low 90s was kind of shocking to me. But I won't specify who voted what, but it was surprising to me. But go ahead and move on to the next question. So, first of all, I got Subway Surfers on the side. That way you can watch that while I'm being boring. So, the greatest accomplishments, I kind of had a rough time, like, kind of making use of the data, but what I did essentially was everybody's answers, I essentially grouped them into these categories that you can see on the left. So for example, if someone was like, "Oh yeah, my 2p any percent time," I was really proud of, they would fall underneath the any percent category and the 2p category. And somebody who, like, for example, was like, "I did a Mainboard marathon," they'd be put under a challenge run. So any percent was ended up being the most popular by far, with 64 people putting something 80% related, which I think makes sense because it's probably the most optimized and most played category. KFR ended up having 10, which KFR essentially means like anybody who has a KFR time, KFR ranking, or like KFR sob, they just put underneath that. Tournament, I put everybody who had something like a tournament result. They're like, "Oh yeah, I placed first place in the SMO any percent open." And that would fall underneath the tournament category. 6 people put almonds related PBs. 6 people put 2P related challenges / PBs. I put min caps underneath 2P. I think makes sense. And 6 people had as like a CE that they're proud of, like a CE time or record. 5 people put something Kaizo related, which I included like all moons Kaizo or just like anything Kaizo related. 4 people put something related to challenge run, which I like I said earlier, I put MBM underneath that. But I also put, like, for example, like in cap throws, I think was one of them. And jumps. I put that as a challenge run. And then the rest are pretty self-explanatory, I think. And then I counted up each of the people who put world records as their greatest accomplishment, and that equated to 9. Either current or former world records. So this is the number of hours histogram. I was kind of surprised to see the average being 3,327. I feel like that's way too high, but I guess it makes sense. As you can see, a lot of people ended up having like over like 6,000, 7,000 hours. Some people had like over 10,000. The max was 18,000, which is really surprising to me. This ended up skewing the data a lot towards the higher numbers. But I think that's okay. The median better suits this set of data. 2,500 hours would be the middle of the road number of hours you'd see from an SMO runner. Let's go ahead and just move on. So the year started pretty straightforward as well. I have a pie chart right here. Shows everybody's year started. The most common year was 2020, actually, surprisingly enough. I guess that's during COVID. And one of the ones that was actually the least popular was 2021 with only 7, which is kind of weird to me because like still during COVID, but kind of like after, I guess, the main wave of COVID. But it's maybe like people started like getting back into the real world and stuff. I don't really know. And the average like year total, I guess, was 2021.26. Pretty straightforward. Let's go on. So the favorite kingdom casually. I asked people to put their top 3 favorite kingdoms. And unsurprisingly, I should say, Wooded, Metro, and Luncheon were among the top, like they're just the top 3 answers. I think that makes a lot of sense. And then the bottom 3, Cloud with 0 votes, Ruined with 2 votes, and Dark Side with 2 votes as well. I was actually kind of surprised to see like Snow and like Lake and Cap being pretty low because I thought they're like pretty good kingdoms in my opinion, but maybe it's just because they're not like top 3 worthy kingdoms is what I have to guess. But let's go ahead and compare that to our favorite kingdoms in speedrunning, which ended up changing the answers a lot. Lost, which previously only had 20, how many? 17 votes, skyrocketing to 52 votes, becoming the number one answer. Both Wooded and Luncheon were still among the top three. Metro, which was formerly a top three, now it ended up dropping to 21, which is a pretty average score. And Mushroom dropped all the way down from like 17, I think, votes to only 2 votes. Not a lot of people do Mushroom and runs, obviously. But everything else was kind of about the same. Go ahead and move on. The average rankings, or the main board category rankings, I should say. This one I was kind of like excited to see the results for. I had people rank the main board categories, 1 being the best category and 6 being the worst category. So the average rankings were Dark Side was number 1, 2.13, and 8% was very close, with a 2.21 average ranking. Darker Side being just ever so slightly better ranked than 8%. All Moons sitting pretty solidly third with 3.14, which is a pi reference. Dark Side placing solidly fourth, 3.69. World Peace 4.31 at fifth, and 100% all the way down at 5.46 average ranking, which was kind of like, because like as a former 100% runner, I guess former/current 100% runner, kind of hurt me like from a personal level, but I can understand it. By far the most unanimous voting was 100% number 6. But the second most and third most were actually 8% and Darker Side, both splitting the number 1 votes. 8% with 39 number 1 votes, and Darker Side with only 38 number 1 votes. So they were very interesting. So, favorite category extensions. This one was just a short answer question. What is your favorite category extension? By far the most popular was Talk 2%, which I think makes sense considering there's a Talk 2% LTA recently, and that probably skewed the results towards that. Nipple percent being solidly at number 2, and then all purple coins post game, and Dark Side, no revisits having both 7 votes, and KFRTA having 6. And everything after that kind of had less votes, but I think this is just the nature of the question. Like, a lot of these categories I would expect to be higher, like all purple coins or like double 80%. I think these are like, they're pretty popular categories, but I think just because of the nature of the question, like you're asking for your favorite category extension, you're not asking for like a top 3 like you would for like favorite kingdoms, for example. I think I probably should have done that instead, so that way I can get more data around them. But yeah, I think that's just the nature of the question, why some of these like popular categories like all purple coins are so low. But you can also see everybody else's answers down there. Not going to go too much further into it. Favorite capture, same kind of deal, is another short answer question. I just had people put their favorite capture. Pokio and Uproot were top 1 and 2. Pokio had 16, Uproot had 14, which kind of surprised me that Uproot was that high, but it's fine. Glidon having 9, T-Rex and Gushin having 7, and Cheap Cheap having 5. Then the same kind of deal with the category extension question. A lot of these like more popular ones that you expect to be high weren't ranked so high because they're not like favorite capture worthy, but they're definitely like top 5 maybe. One of those examples like Frog. Strangely enough, I will say Tree had 4 votes, which ended up tying Bowser, which I think we're trolling here, but that's fine. And Rock had 3 votes. I don't know. I don't think these are favorite captures. Third thing. This is controller style question. I asked people what controller they play with. By far the most popular answer was Switch 1 Procon, 55 votes. Switch 2 Procon being still better than the Joy-Cons, but slightly less at 19. And then Switch 1 and 2 detached Joy-Cons both had 9 votes each. And the Switch 1 Joy-Con grip and the Switch 2 Joy-Con grip having pretty low votes. But the controller split between Pro-Con and Joy-Cons ended up being 73 to 26, which I guess makes sense when I think about it, because like I would assume like if you picked 4 players, 3 of them would be Pro-Con players, right? That's basically what that's saying, which that makes sense to me. So I got another retention break for you. Got more Subway Surfers. Enjoy that. Well, I got to go over this boring question. Switch 1 versus Switch 2. This one ended up being a 60 to 40% Switch 2 to Switch 1, which I think makes sense. I found this graph that was presented by Neo about like in September of 2025, about 3 months after the Switch 2 came out. And you can see that the Switch 2, this is like based on like speedrun.com submissions. The Switch 2 ended up having 52 people on like the far right, 52 to like 38, I would say, which is basically a 60-40 split. So it basically hasn't changed that much since the Switch 2 came out about 3 months after, which was kind of surprising to me. I thought more people would be on Switch 2, but apparently not. I don't know why. But let's go ahead and move on. So I decided to try that control style question again. But this time I excluded all the Switch 1 runners to see like what each controller ranked among Switch 2 runners. The Switch 1 Pro-Con ended up actually, placing a lot less. 27 to 19 becomes more of a 50-50, but not quite. Obviously the Switch 2 votes, they don't change because you have to be on Switch 2 to use Switch 2 Pro-Con, for example. The Switch 2 detached Joy-Cons were actually far more popular than the Switch 1 detached Joy-Cons, which was kind of surprising to me. And the Joy-Con grips were about even as well. So, moving on to our other category. Let me take a sip of water real quick. Favorite colors. So, this one was pretty fun to ask. The top 3 ended up being blue, green, and purple. And that's kind of like pretty solid top 3, I would say. Then red was pretty far behind in fourth, having 10 votes. I think this makes sense. I was kind of surprised to see green this high. Blue and purple makes sense to me, but green kind of this high is kind of surprising to me. And that's about it for that question. Yeah, and yellow and orange only having 2 votes kind of surprised me as well, but it makes sense. A lot of people like those colors. Favorite seasons, this one also pretty straightforward. Summer ended up being the number 1 vote by 32 votes compared to fall's 28. Then spring in 3rd with 21 and winter in 4th. This kind of surprised me, I'll say, because I live in a pretty warm climate. So whenever it's summertime, it's like you never go outside and it's painful. A lot of people might buy a summer because that's when school's out, for example. But it's pretty interesting to see the results for this. Move on. Favorite school subject. This one was pretty fun to ask as well. Math was by far the most popular answer with 46, and then science was 17. Fine arts surprisingly being pretty high with 12. And interestingly enough, computer science and physical education were options that I did not include on the list. And they ended up getting votes. I think next time I do one of these, we'll probably need to add computer science and physical education to and 5 people put like none. I don't like school. School is boring. Which, thank you guys for that. Appreciate that. But yeah, that's basically it. Favorite music genre, this kind of difficult to kind of use any of the data here, but rock and pop and video game music. I included video game music because a lot of people in this community like it, and it ended up being more popular votes. Um, Strangely enough, like I had a list, and one of those was country music, and not a single person voted for country music, which I found interesting because, well, maybe it's because of where I live, but country music is pretty popular where I live, and not a single person voted. Um, the 7 people who voted nothing either put no response or just said like, I don't have a favorite genre or something like that. But yeah, favorite food. This one was kind of hard because it was just a short answer question of like, what's your favorite food? And people could put whatever they want. So I had a other category for this one. People who didn't like people who for vote their excuse me for foods that had less than 2 votes. I included them off the pie chart and put them in another category. I'll show them briefly in a second. But pizza ended up being number 1 with 16 votes. Tacos and number 2 was 10 votes. Then pasta and steak in third and fourth. I'll go ahead and show you some of the people put for favorite foods. Well, I take it on the left over there. So dominant hand, this one was 84% right hand, 14% left hand, percent ambidextrous. One person put ambidextrous. Shout out to that one person. I do have another audience retention break. This one's a lot shorter though because this question's pretty short. The question about aligns with like the general population, it being like an 85-15 kind of split. I forget exactly what it was that I saw, but it about aligns with the general population. And nothing special here. I have another one as well. You can see the same Subway Surfers gameplay 4 separate times. This one, cats and dogs. This one was kind of surprising to me because based on what I had seen, dogs ended up being more popular among like the general U.S. population, but cats ended up winning with 57 votes, which was kind of surprising to me, seeing that cats won that much. My guess with that is probably because a lot of SMO runners are inside and probably introverted and would probably prefer the inactive nature of a cat, you could say. But still pretty close to a 50-50 though. Next, I have days of the week ranking, which was pretty unanimous. Saturday ended up placing first, and then Friday, then Sunday, and Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, essentially. I think this was pretty unanimous across everybody. The most common, I guess, answers were that. This question kind of sucked, I can't lie, but it was still fun to ask. And see all the data points there. And then finally, the red button versus the blue button. This one was a lot of fun to watch people vote for. So basically, the question is, as you can see, everyone in the world has to take a private vote by pressing a red or blue button. If more than 50% of people press the blue button, then everyone survives. However, if less than 50% of people press the blue button, only the people who press the red button survive. Essentially, kind of like a weird moral question or ethics question, I mean. And the results for that question were blue when it ended up winning with 53 votes and red with 46. So everybody survives. Good job, everybody. You all survived. I'm not going to answer the moral or the ethics question here. I think that's just be up to y'all. But I thought that was interesting to see. And yeah, that is the last question that I have to show y'all. Again, if you want more in-depth explanations for a bunch of these questions. I have a Google Doc that I have written 33 pages of results for. So if you want to read through that, then you can go ahead and do that. It's going to be so much fun, right? Um, but yeah, that's basically it. Hope you guys enjoyed. I had a lot of fun putting all these results together. So I hope maybe I can get to do this again sometime. But that's kind of just it. Have a good day. Have a good day, everybody. Guess I'll see y'all soon. Bye.